Excited to have you with me today. Today we are talking about active listening and really showing kids that they deserve the right to be seen and to be heard, and we will do our best to understand and know and love them. Let's dive right in to our discussion about active listening. And really, the big thing to understand is that active listening is about more than just hearing words. Active listening is about listening with intent, and that intent needs to be to understand, not to respond. Many times as adults, it feels like it's our job to constantly have the answer or constantly get the last word. There are many times where a family is in my office and they talk to me and say, it seems like they always want to get the last word. They always want to get the last word in. And why is that always such a bad thing? Especially if we are listening with the intention to understand, not to respond. When you're trying to get really the full understanding of what is going on with the child. Why did they show that disruptive behavior, or how are they feeling? Not to respond, not to try to fix it, not to try to change it, but really just to try to understand the child's perspective. When you do that, you're showing children that you value their thoughts and that you respect their feelings. It's about having that intention to understand, not to respond. Active listening, as defined by PracticeWise, which is a organization that puts together all sorts of the best ways for therapists to teach clients about things. PracticeWise defines active listening as a communication technique that requires the listener fully concentrate, understand, respond, and then remember what is being said. All that to say, active listening goes beyond just hearing words. It's about understanding the message and the emotions behind the words. Think of how frustrated you can be when your child tries to find the loophole in a rule that you've said. Maybe it's about a bedtime, or maybe it's about how much of a snack they can have, whatever it might be. But have you ever been in a situation where a child wanted to repeat back to you exactly what you said? And when they repeat back to you what you said, you hear it and you say, I know that's what I said, but it's not what I meant. Or I know that's what I said, but you know what I meant. Active listening is that what you meant. It goes beyond just the words. It's about understanding the message and the emotions behind the words. When a child gets home from school and you ask them, how was your day? And they say, it was great. That is so different from a child getting home from school, you asking them about their day, and they say, it was great. Can't you tell? There's a different message beyond the words. And active listening does everything possible to try to understand that underlying message, those underlying emotions behind the words. Because remember that with active listening, the intent is to understand, not to respond. Someone once said, children are great imitators, so give them something great to imitate. As adults, we want children to listen when we talk. We want them to understand what we are trying to say. And parents will call me and say, my child just isn't listening to me. But when I watch a conversation between them and their child, they're not modeling to the child how they want to be listened to. So yes, active listening is all about listening to understand, not to respond. It's about trying to get to those messages beneath the words. But if you want children to show this skill, you are going to have to model it for them. Because children are great imitators, but you have to give them something great to imitate. If you want children to listen to you, then you need to model how to listen. Show them that their words have value by giving them your full attention when they are speaking. I've seen it over and over again. As a matter of fact, I've said on here many times, my dad and I go to sushi every Saturday, and at the sushi restaurant, my dad and I have started to see more families come in where everyone sits down, pulls out a device, and is on their device the entire time, whether it be a tablet or a phone. I even saw just 2 weeks ago, there was a family who all sat down, everybody got out their device, and everyone put in their own earbuds. No one was speaking to each other. No one was checking in. No one was communicating. So no wonder children have a difficult time showing how to listen and showing this skill of like, yes, I hear you, I understand, because it's so rarely modeled for them. Children can't learn unless they're shown. Words don't work as well with children, so just telling them you need to listen doesn't do it. But if you'll show them how to listen, then it can click in. If you want children to listen, you have to model how to listen. Because remember, what we want to show is that the intent is to understand, not to respond. When your child is talking, are you trying to get your word in? Do you cut them off? Do you not let them finish their full thought? If that's the case, then don't be surprised when they don't let you finish, when they cut you off, and when they interrupt your thought. But if you'll let them fully express themselves, even if it's a long-winded and sometimes wild ride of an explanation or response, if you'll do your best to understand that message beneath the words and understand the emotions and validate it, then they will be able to do that when it's their turn. Let's talk, though, about some techniques for active listening. We know what it is, and we know now that it can't be something that you just tell children to do. So how then can you model active listening? Thought leader Bryant H. McGill says one of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. Isn't it true that in our world, you can get bogged down with so many things and you can miss so many pieces of messages, and maybe you're just scrolling really fast, but if you will give someone the time and attention to actually listen to what they're saying, that is a huge form of respect. Here's how you can do that with your child. First is you can use empathetic responses. What that means is after the child has explained how they were feeling, even if they made a poor choice, even if their behavior was disruptive, and even if you feel like they got angry about something they should not have been angry about, can you still find a way to say, I can see why you would feel that way? That's what an empathetic response is. If at the end of what a child is saying, you cannot give an empathetic response, then you probably weren't listening well enough. Because if you'll listen, whether the child got angry or sad or scared or excited or happy, when you listen fully to a child, you can always find a way to say, I can see why you would feel that way, even if you're going to follow that up with, but that doesn't make your behavior acceptable. But I can see why you would feel angry, but they didn't mean anything by it. But can you see why they would feel that way? That's what an empathetic response is. And when you use those responses, children feel validated. They can understand that, you know what, even if we disagree, that's okay. I can see why you would feel that way, even though I'm disappointed or frustrated or whatever it might be with your behavior. I can see why you would feel that way. That's an empathetic response. Another thing you can do is just show nonverbal cues that you are listening. Maintain eye contact with the child while they're talking. Are you staring at your screen while they are talking? If so, then don't be surprised when they are staring at their screens when you are talking, because children will do what they see much more than what they are told. Can you nod to show that you're listening and that you're understanding? Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. Do your reactions model and reflect back to the child that you are understanding what they're saying? You're picking up what they're putting down. You can also paraphrase. You can sum up a long series of sentences, which children sometimes need to work their thoughts out. Maybe it goes on, and maybe in your brain you're like, I'm not exactly sure where this is going. But at the end of that full thought, you can say, oh, so what you're saying is, and that's paraphrasing. You can wrap up these maybe multiple sentences or even multiple paragraphs in some cases of thoughts and stream of consciousness, and you can wrap it up into, oh, so what you're saying is sometimes it's hard to get along with them. Oh, so what you're saying is you really like science. Oh, so what you're saying is recess was tough today. If you'll reflect that back, then the child sees, man, they took the time to listen to my whole thing and they made sense of it. They're starting to understand the message beneath the words, the emotions that come from it. And if you don't understand, then you can use open-ended questions that you don't want a specific answer to. That is so important. If you are asking a question only to test if a child will respond in the way you want them to, then maybe it's not a great question. Here's why. Because if children hear those questions too often, then in those times when you really do want them to open up and be honest and share with you because you don't know, they'll still be looking for what is the right answer instead of what is the truth. Using those open-ended questions that really allow for the child to respond however they need to respond in that moment, even if that's a way that maybe you disagree with. But if you'll use those open-ended questions and allow them to respond, then children see that this is also a dialogue. We can go back and forth. You can ask things, how is a great question. Oh, how did you do that? How did you keep it together when they were picking on you? Oh, how did that make you feel? Oh, how did you get that project done on time? Oh my goodness, how did you get that A on that test? That is so amazing. And let the child respond in their way. So those are just some tools that you can use. You can use empathetic responses. I can see why you would feel that way. You can show nonverbal cues like maintaining eye contact, nodding, matching your facial expression to the emotional expression from the child. You can paraphrase, so what you're saying is, and you can use those open-ended questions. If it starts with how, it's probably a good question to be asking. Remember that active listening is all about listening to understand, not to respond. So when you ask more questions, when you use those empathetic responses, when you show nonverbal cues that you're paying attention and you can paraphrase, then what you're doing is you're showing, I am only here listening. Right now. Now, it might be my turn to respond in a minute, but right now I'm going to give you my full attention and you get the floor. You get to be the one to speak. That's what children need to see, because if they'll see that, then they'll be able to show that when it's their turn. And there are so many benefits to the skill of active listening. The nurturing parenting curriculum, the nationwide sponsored curriculum, all about preventing child abuse and building strong families, says this: when kids feel listened to, they feel understood, respected, and valued. This boosts their self-esteem and increases their overall communication skills. When children are listened to, it allows them to listen, but it also allows them to communicate more fully, because as you are responding in different ways and helping them make connections between thoughts and feelings and emotions by paraphrasing, by asking those open-ended questions, by using empathetic responses, then the child's brain is actually actively engaging. And so that boosts their self-esteem and allows them to communicate more appropriately and more fully in the future, because they were allowed to get out their full thought. My parents are very funny people, but my mom, a lot of times she'll be speaking and she rushes to get her words out, and she talks about how that is because for so many years my dad struggled with ADHD, and he would constantly be jumping in before she was finished with her thoughts, and so now she rushes to get the thought out as quick as she can so that she can't get cut off before the end. Is your child rushing to try to get their thoughts out before you cut them off, or do you give them the time to really get out their full thought? Because remember, active listening isn't just about avoiding mistakes or misunderstandings or conflicts. It's about strengthening your bond with your child and empowering them with effective communication skills. As you are showing active listening, there will still be misunderstandings, but maybe they'll be fewer. And that's a great thing. And maybe by showing active listening, you can reduce conflict by avoiding a lot of those misunderstandings, and by showing the child that you are willing to fully listen to their perspective even when you disagree with it, so they will be more likely to be fully willing to listen to your perspective even when they disagree with it. But that's not all it's about. It also strengthens your bond with your child. Even when the misunderstandings and the conflicts come up, your bond will be stronger because you have shown this child you believe they are a person who is worthy of your time. And you'll be empowering them with effective communication skills. And in their life, there will still be misunderstandings. There will still be conflict. But when those things come up, they'll be more equipped to handle it because they've got this skill of active listening. Active listening is such an important part of parenting, because when you show active listening to a child, then they know that they are seen. They know that they are heard. They know that they are understood. They know that they are known, and that they know that they are loved. It's all about listening with that intent to understand, not to respond. And it shows that you value children's thoughts and respect their feelings. Make sure this week that as you are interacting with your child or the children in your life, do your best to implement those skills of empathetic responses, of the nonverbal cues, of paraphrasing, and of open-ended questions, so that children will see that you are doing your best to understand their world, understand where they are coming from. Because if you'll do that, they'll do their best to show you that same thing. Children are great imitators, so give them something great to imitate. Active listening is a great thing that children can imitate, but they can't do it unless you show them how. So show them those active listening skills, and they'll be able to do it too. Be sure to tune in here every 2 weeks for another Facebook Live event. Be sure to follow MisterStuTV on YouTube, youtube.com/@MisterStuTV and youtube.com/@MisterStuTV parents, and @MisterStuTV everywhere on social media, so you don't miss out on all of the mental health fun and resources and training that are coming your way. Sadness, our brand new episode on YouTube, is out this Friday. Be sure to tune in for that so that children can understand that it's okay to feel sad, and some things that they can do to stay in control when they are feeling that emotion. And as always, be sure to tune in to MisterStuTV Parents on YouTube for even more resources and training coming your way. I'll be back again in just a few weeks with another Facebook Live event. Until then, spread the word, share the love. Bye-bye.